when you look at the DSM, which is the diagnostic manual, really what a disorder is, it's a group of symptoms. Like for, anxiety, like do you have excessive worry? Are you extremely restless? Do you have a hard time concentrate? Like if you meet so many of these criteria, then in a certain time period, then you meet the criteria for that diagnosis. But a year later, 6 months down the line or whatever, you could maybe not meet all those criteria. You might have one or two of them, and you no longer fit that diagnosis.
When do you think is the right time someone should say that they do have, a mental condition, circumstance going on at the time? When do you guys think is the right time?
There's no set right time for that. I would say best advice would be, if you're going to be in a situation with someone who has some type of mental whatever, try to keep the conversation as positive as possible. I'm talking about verbiage, because I've been learning that in therapy as well, because your verbiage that comes out is how you want yourself to be treated, how you talk to yourself. Most people who have a mental illness talk to themselves worse than anyone ever spoken to them ever.
Absolutely.
Because it's a matter of, why are you thinking this way? What did you do? How did you get here? Then you start thinking about everything is your fault, and it's you get down on yourself, and that's where the ISO comes from.
That is. So when do you think is the right time somebody should disclose that kind of information?
I think that should be right up front,
Like on their profile, their dating profile page.
Be like, I am crazy. I mean, because think about it, like, why would you want to invest into someone, and then when will you pop the question? Like when? On date number 3, when you guys already, this guy already spent time, he spent money, he spent energy, dating you guys probably hung out, now the feelings get involved. It's like, I have something to tell you. I'm really crazy. Well, crazy is not a medical.
Being crazy, Thaddeus. That's not a nice word.
Not crazy. Say, I have mental challenges. Okay.
Thank you.
Like that's not, you said that from up front. Same way as if you have some, something that's not ordinary, like for instance, like if you have some sort of like ailment or
we're gonna talk about that, chronic illness.
You need to, those are the things that you need to display up front. Or if you're extremely rich or like extremely poor, those are things that you want to disclose up front.
Wow.
Yeah, but then there comes a protection of that too. Like if you're extremely rich, why would you tell someone up front? You're just asking yourself for the gold diggers to take advantage of you. And if you're extremely poor, why would you say that either? Because everyone's going to write you off right away. Well, so everyone's going to try and, yes, I agree in saying that it should be a discussion up front. You're right.
When I would extremely rich, or I would give everything up front. Hey, this is who I am. This is what it is. And let the chips fall with me.
Okay,
but most people with a mental health disorder don't know necessarily who they fully are yet to be able to divulge it like that, right?
Well, they better know.
That's the thing is that there are, I believe, a lot of people that are undiagnosed, especially men. I think women are more so willing to go in and get the treatment, but men and mental health is a huge thing that they don't really go for. So
I do agree with you.
Yeah.
In all seriousness, I do agree with you. Because men don't go to the doctor for anything. They see it as a sign of.
Wow. Okay, wait, we have to stop. Thaddeus agreed with me on something. Oh gosh. I'm gonna have to make something show up on the screen. Thaddeus, I'm gonna slow-mo it. Say it again, Thaddeus. I'm gonna slow-mo it. I say I agree with you.
The moment has passed.
But okay. Yeah, you are correct in that.
So quick statistic about chronic illness, a good segue into chronic illnesses, is that according to, again, from the CDC, I got this National Center of Chronic Disease, 6 in 10 adults in the US have a chronic disease, and 4 in 10 have 2 or more. Okay, so
define chronic disease though.
Yeah, chronic disease is something that's lasting. The things they kind of mentioned were things like diabetes, kidney issues, heart disease, those kinds of things. So it's something that you have chronic, like forever. It's not going to go away. It's an illness that you have. Okay.
And then there's probably another statistic that majority of those people don't even know they have it.
Oh, and that's the thing, is all these statistics are just reported. So it's not even the people that have it and are undiagnosed, those who don't want to go in and, you know, be a part of the statistics. So this, can you imagine how much more it is than this? Okay. So, and especially again, the age group, I think a lot of times, I think I read somewhere, the age group that we're in is when people start becoming aware that, okay, I have this kind of disease, I have this ailment, you know what I mean? So as people are understanding this in the dating field, you have to think about, if 6 out of 10, that means most likely you're going to date someone that has something chronic. And I have kind of gotten to know guys. One, I think, told me he was diabetic. Another one told me he actually had herpes, which we're going to do a whole segment about STDs, because that's huge too. And you don't want, the percentage of STDs, we're going to do a segment on that alone. But
you know, when you were talking about the mental illness and like what's the best time to come out and talk about it, that is exactly what I thought. If someone had herpes or something, because mental illness is very stigmatized. So there's an assumption that you're crazy if you come out with mental illness. And, you know, so I would assume the same type of embarrassment and shame kind of accompanies someone being able to disclose a mental illness that you would have with herpes. So I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, so someone that does have herpes, do they just not ever go into a relationship? And when do you disclose that?
Exactly.
Yeah, and
from my experience,
why I was saying,
the person who had the herpes, he told me we had gone on we went out maybe 3 or 4 times already, and we had spoken a lot. And I really appreciated that he told me, because I think, you know, the herpes numbers, it's like over 50% at this point, I believe. So a lot of people have it and just don't say anything. And they feel like, okay, if I don't have an outbreak, I don't have to say anything. So I was really respectful that he said it, and it didn't deter me from like wanting to talk to him. I really actually admire that he did. And I thought he did it in a good timing. So it wasn't like I was too far in, but I kind of got a little feel for the kind of person he was. The person,
and that's fair, because you at least got a chance to see him.
And the person with diabetes, it was the same thing. I had spoken to him maybe for like a month or so. You know, when he said it, I already liked who he was, so it didn't really matter to me. But I think there is a fine line, because you kind of want the person to kind of get a feel for you before you just, you know,
you don't want your circumstance. I find that you don't want to become known for your circumstance. You want to become known for you, because
you don't want it to
all
define
these things are developed. Exactly. So that's why I say it's all in how you handle it, rather than just, you know.
Well, and you don't want to be a label. I remember I had a high school student that I met with, and it was her first meeting with me, and she kind of was very standoffish, and like she didn't want to be there, and she kind of stood in the corner of the room, and she just kind of said, like, before I even got to know her, she was like, oh, you know, I got problems. I'm bipolar, I'm this, I'm that. Like, she named off like 5 different diagnoses that she had been diagnosed with. And so I just looked at her and I said, okay, when you're not this, and that, who are you? Like, you know what I mean? So it's so important because really, it's one of the reasons I stayed away. I wasn't always a licensed mental health counselor. I was a school counselor for a long time. And I became licensed, but part of the reason why I stayed away from it for so long was because I was very frustrated with labeling somebody and, you know, just kind of stamping this stigma on somebody. When you look at the DSM, which is the diagnostic manual, really what a disorder is, it's a group of symptoms Like for, you know, anxiety, like, do you have excessive worry? Are you extremely restless? Do you have a hard time concentrate? Like, if you meet so many of these criteria, then in a certain time period, then you meet the criteria for that diagnosis. But, you know, a year later, 6 months down the line or whatever, you could maybe not meet all those criteria. You might have one or two of them, and you no longer fit that diagnosis. So, you know, mental health is a little bit different, I think, sometimes than physical health, because even though I think it's important to sometimes look at them in the same light, but it really truly is a group of symptoms that is how you're dying. It's not like they can do some chemical analysis on you, unless it's like a neurological. If it's neurological, that's different.
That's different.
Oh, that's a great point. I love it. And you know, there are so many things that are toxic to relationships, and people don't have to say it out the gate. You know, they don't have to come and say, you know, I'm going to cheat on you. I've cheated on my last 5 girlfriends, and that's going to destroy this relationship.
No one's going to tell you that.
I'm going to come and be toxic and talk down to you and make you feel like you're nothing. You know, like, there's so many toxic things that people portray in relationships that is more traumatizing than somebody telling me they have diabetes, you know? So I think, again, the whole stigma associated with that, I think needs to go away.
And I agree with that, because the one thing I would say that's the most positive thing about dating someone who has a mental illness, depending on what stage they're in it, you will learn to communicate in a different way possible. Because the one positive thing you can get from any relationship, period, whether the experience is good, bad, ugly, whatever, is perspective. No matter what, you will always get a perspective. So you'll be able to walk away with that. And people with mental health communicate a lot differently than people who don't. So the most positive thing that's going to come from it is you're gonna either learn to communicate or learn how you're not going to communicate. One of the two.
I love this. I'm really loving this conversation. So again, opening that up, you know, send this video to someone, talk to someone about the topic, someone you're dating, look at yourself, you know, see if this is something that you need to consider as well.